Okay, welcome everyone to the latest webinar in the VIA Live product training series. And we are honored today to host Fyodor and the urine malaria test, an innovative product that's the first of its kind in the market. So I know everyone's very excited to learn more about this product. And before we jump fully into that, I want to just take a step back and explain to those that are new to VIA Global Health what it is we do and who we are. So VIA Global Health is an online sourcing platform for medical equipment and consumables that has over 140 suppliers and nearly 50,000 products. And our purpose is to make it faster, easier, and more affordable for you to source the necessary equipment. So we can do that in a number of ways, where you can come to the site and search for a product here in the top search bar. You can find your different category of products and find what you're looking for there. Or what you can do here is look through our featured innovations on the site. And those are where we list our most innovative products that are available in the world. And we focus on them here so that you can learn more about what's available in the market that might be perfect for exactly what you're looking for. So a little bit more of our popular products. You can also find out more information about VIA by going to our About section. But we're going to focus here today on the Fyodor Urine Malaria test for the UMT. I'd like to just show you the product page. So here is where we just list all the information about every product. Regulatory approvals, a short description, information about what number of tests are per kit, and then also pictures, because we know you want to see what it looks like, see the packaging, see it being used in the clinical environment, and then any key graphics and specifications about the product. You can see the product description here and additional information, this graphic, any product studies or journals or clinical results or package inserts can be found here. Additional videos are available, and then if you're not a verified distributor with VIA yet, you can request a quote here on the site. And so if you click that request a quote button, that will take you to this page where you can list your expected order quantity and also your contact information, and then someone from VIA will contact you directly to answer your questions and provide a quote. If you are a verified distributor with VIA already and you're on this call, of course you will be taken to the product page, but it would list your pricing here. So you can request your invoicing and your shipping quotes at that point. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Victoria and the team to take you through a full demonstration and presentation, and then we'll wrap the call up with your questions.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning, perhaps, depending on where you are. And thank you for your time. I appreciate you spending the next 30 minutes or so with us to share the journey of the urine malaria test, and I'm hoping for an engaging discussion. I will spend the next few minutes with you sharing a little bit about the urine malaria test, and we can go into Q&A afterwards. A little brief background about Fyodor Biotechnologies. Our mission is to develop and commercialize novel products that address the unmet global needs in emerging markets. So things like the urine malaria test is one of them, and we have other products in the pipeline that we're going to be bringing out on the same non-invasive platform. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking a lot about malaria diagnosis. This is what it looks like today: microscopy or rapid tests. And what's consistent with both our current methods is that it requires blood. It also requires the expertise of a somewhat technical person to aid in that testing process. But we have a new solution. Fyodor Biotechnologies has come out with the first urine malaria test. It's the first test that can be done at any point of care, meaning it can be done at home, it can be done at a healthcare center, it can be done in rural areas. Essentially, we've made it easy to use. It removes the barrier of needing to go to a specific facility to conduct a test for malaria. And we've also removed the barrier of needing to give a blood sample to do a malaria test. Now you can do a malaria test using just a few drops of urine, essentially the same you would with a pregnancy test. It's simple, and it takes 25 minutes to conduct the test. This is a pictorial of what the test looks like. You is you collect some urine in a dry container, transfer a few drops of urine into a sample cup, put the white end of the test strip into that sample cup, and within 25 minutes, if 2 lines shows up on the urine test strip, you have malaria, or the patient has malaria, and you need to treat immediately. We know that treatment is crucial within 24 to 48 hours of diagnosing malaria. If only 1 line shows up, it indicates that the patient is negative for malaria, and that fever needs to be investigated further. If no line shows up, it means that that test was done inappropriately and a new test needs to be done. I need to mention that the indication, or one of the telltale signs of malaria, is fever. So when a patient has a fever, you can collect a urine sample and conduct this test. And what I would do now is show you what the test looks like. So this is what the test looks like. Essentially, this is a paper strip that you can insert into a sample cup. That sample cup is very small, and that's done for a reason. We wanted to prevent user error. Basically, you will collect the urine, as I mentioned, of a febrile patient. Collect the urine in a clean, dry container, and just put a couple of drops into this container. It looks like a thimble, and it takes about 10 drops or so of urine. Take the test strip, the white end of the test strip, put it into the sample cup, and let it sit for 25 minutes. If the patient is positive, 2 lines will appear here in the display window. If the patient is negative, only 1 line would appear. So again, it's very simple to do. It doesn't require technical expertise. Mothers are very well aware of how to do this because many of them have done pregnancy tests before. And essentially, if a patient has a fever and you suspect that fever to be due to malaria, when you live in a malaria endemic country, this is something that you can do at home. You don't need the first morning catch or first urine of the day. It can be done anytime. What we suggest is that the patient has a fever. A little bit about the technology. It's backed by intellectual property and patents from Johns Hopkins University and Fyodor. It's a simple test strip platform, and basically what it does, it detects the malaria parasite proteins that are shed in febrile patients, and they're shed in urine of febrile patients. We've also conducted some clinical evaluation, and the references for that clinical evaluation is listed on the screen for you. You're more than welcome to Google urine malaria test and malaria journal, and that first clinical trial will come up. You can also Google malaria and Journal of Clinical Microbiology, and the larger scale clinical trial will also come up. And what we found in the clinical trial, and I'm going to summarize both clinical trials briefly, is that the performance of the test was pretty similar to the performance of the blood rapid test. Numerically, our urine malaria test showed a sensitivity about 84–85%. and a specificity over about 84–85%. When we looked at how that compared to the blood rapid test, statistically we saw that there was no difference. Again, for more details on the clinical trials that were conducted in Nigeria with over 500 patients, 500 febrile patients, you can go to Journal of Clinical Microbiology, or if you want to contact via Global Health, I'm sure they'll be able to send you the link to the journal. And as I mentioned before, the clinical trial was done. It showed that the urine malaria test was very comparable to the blood-based rapid test. And this is a game changer for us because this is the first non-invasive one-step malaria test. You don't need to add any blood or any reagent to the testing process. All you need is to collect urine, put the test strip inside the urine sample, walk away and come back in 25 minutes to read your results. Just as a note, when you look at the clinical trial publication, one of the things that we noticed was that the patients who were 5 years and under had a higher sensitivity. So we saw more sensitivity when we tested patients under 5, so which is really good for us because we know that children under 5 in Africa are very prone to malaria. In Nigeria, for example, 25 or 20% of children under 5 die from malaria. So having a simple test that a mother can do at home to find out if her child has malaria or not is really a game changer. It's empowering for that mother, that family, or if it's an adult, that patient, to be able to do that test in the comfort of their home and then look for treatment based on what their test results indicate. So that you're aware, we've had a lot of partners in bringing the urine malaria test to where we are now. We've worked with Johns Hopkins University. We've worked with the Federal Ministry of Health in Nigeria. We've worked with the Lagos State Ministry of Health. The College of Medicine at University of Lagos was very instrumental. We have quite a number of other partners that are not listed on here, but just so you know that we didn't do this alone, and it's been a 8-year journey to bring this new technology to you. So we like to think of the urine malaria test as not just a malaria test, because when someone presents with a fever, you can't be sure that it's just malaria. We need to think of it more as an appropriate fever management tool. And the way we see the urine malaria test is that it's going to increase the testing of malaria so that people are adequately monitoring or managing their fever. So if you're testing for malaria more frequently, now that many barriers have been removed, barriers such as blood or having to go to a specific center to do the test, that's now removed. We believe that you'll have increased treatment of positive cases of malaria, increased investigation of negative cases of malaria, and essentially you're managing that fever. If it's negative, there has to be more investigation done to find out what is going on. You just don't start treating patients that are negative for malaria. So we see an increase in efficiencies. We see a reduction of inappropriate use of ACT medications based on the results, a reduction of overdiagnosis and underdiagnosis of malaria, and essentially an increased well-being of patients. So we like to look at the urine malaria test as a fever management tool, not just a malaria testing tool. I can share with you some of our awards and recognitions. Again, if you Google, you can come up with a lot of these.
So there's quite a few questions have come in.
Great.
The first one, yeah. There's always a very inquisitive group of folks on these webinars, so that's always a good thing. The first one that comes in from the most people is just, where has the test been used? I know you mentioned Nigeria quite extensively, but what other countries is it being used?
So we are a new company, and the urine malaria test is our flagship product. We've been doing the research for about 8 years now, and we just launched it in Nigeria. It's been regulatory approved by the regulatory body of Nigeria. What we're looking to do is scale up into other countries. It's also been approved by the regulatory body of Liberia. We're looking to expand to other countries in specifically West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa in 2018. And there's something specific that I need to mention. The test is specific for Plasmodium falciparum. So that's quite important to understand. We do plan to go into Asia in probably late 2018 to 2019, but that's a little further down the line. So right now it's approved in Nigeria and Liberia, and we're looking to get regulatory approval in other countries in Africa.
Perfect. And actually, a nice transition because you just mentioned the one parasite there. Does it also identify more species, or is it just specific to that one identification?
It's specific to Plasmodium falciparum, which is predominant in sub-Saharan Africa. What we're looking to do down the line is come up with a second test that's going to also be sensitive to Plasmodium vivax, but that's down the line.
Okay. It's funny, we had a question exactly about that, so it was a nice transition. So a couple of questions have come through just about the cup itself. I guess the first question would be, is that included? And if it's not, is there a certain material it must be, and must it be sterile?
So it is included in the product packaging, and we do that to prevent user error. What we don't want is for people to take the test strip and drop it inside a cup of water. What that does is it creates an error. The test works by just soaking up a small amount of urine. So the white end of the test wicks up a small amount of urine, just about 10 drops or so. And that's why we put that small, tiny cup in there to prevent the user error. And that's also why it takes 25 minutes. What it's doing is soaking up the urine and wicking it up the test strip line or the test strip itself. And as the urine moves up the test strip, a reaction is occurring. Once it detects the malaria protein, then 2 lines will show up. If it doesn't detect the malaria protein, only 1 line shows up.
Okay, perfect. And can that cup be reused after sterilization, or is that a single disposable use?
We provide it as a single disposable use. You don't need to sterilize it. You just need a clean, dry container. So it can be reused, but we provide enough in the product packaging for each test strip, so you really don't need to save it.
Okay, perfect.
And you can imagine if someone is buying this to take home, or to do it at a clinic or a rural center, we want to remove the hassle of having to clean it and then use it for the next patient. There's no need for that.
Okay, perfect. And I know you just mentioned, again, using it in the home setting or rural settings. There's a few questions just about training. Obviously, you wouldn't provide training to every person, but is there an instruction kit included in every box, just so it's clear how it's supposed to be used and administered?
Yes. Each box comes with 5 tests for now. We are looking to modify the packaging so that we have single test boxes. So this is what the box looks like. And inside the box, there's a package insert. And there are test strips inside the box and the sample cups for each individual test strips. There's 5 in here. But again, we're looking to modify the packaging. We've gotten some feedback with the limited what would I say, the time we've spent in Nigeria. We've gotten a lot of feedback that a single packaging would be great. So we're looking to modify that as we scale up into other countries.
A question was as well about, obviously the cup comes with it. Is there no other consumable or accessories needed with this, just the strip and the cup?
Just the strip and the cup. We wanted to make this as simple as possible.
Perfect. And so I know you mentioned the parasite earlier that it tests for is the same as the blood, basically. Is there anything else that this measures differently, or maybe more so than what the blood test, or is it basically a standard for both?
It's standard for both, but the results, or how should I explain? So it detects the Plasmodium protein in the urine. for the urine malaria test, that is. The blood test detects the protein in the blood. So when a patient has malaria, they're shedding these proteins, and you can find them in the blood and the urine.
Okay, perfect. And then this would be a nice transition for this. A question actually from me. Detect as well early as it does through the process of malaria? So obviously if someone were to come in the very early stages, would it detect as well as a blood test at that point?
So what we tell patients, and what's in the package insert, is that they need to have a fever. And the reason why we ask that there's a presence of a fever is that when a patient has malaria and they have a fever, they're shedding these proteins. So it makes it easier to detect those proteins in the urine. So if they don't have a fever, it's a little bit more difficult to detect the proteins. So we want to be clear that the indication for use is fever.
Okay, perfect. And then there was, I know you had mentioned earlier for children under 5 it was available to be used. Are there any age restrictions at a certain age for older populations that there's any restrictions, or can it be used across the full age spectrum?
When we did the clinical trials, we didn't see any impact on age or gender. However, we saw that children under 5, the test was more sensitive. In the clinical trials, the age range from 2 years old and up to the 70s. So if you're able to collect urine sample from a child, you can use the test. It's a bit more difficult with an infant because infants typically are wearing diapers. So we did not do the clinical trials on infants. We did them on patients or people that were 2 years and above.
Okay, perfect. And then as far as reliability standards, obviously we know the expiration date, but everything beyond that, from a specification on reliability, is this comparable to other tests in the market?
Yes, so that's what we saw in the clinical trials, and for those who are science nuts, you can certainly look up the clinical trial information. It was published in peer-reviewed journal, the 2 clinical trials, and what it showed was that it was roughly about 85% sensitive. We looked at other blood-based tests to see what the range of sensitivity and specificity was, and this is actually in one of the backup slides. And in other publications, we saw ranges for sensitivity as from the 70s and up, and for specificities as low as 39%. So we felt comfortable that our test fell within the range with that 85%, 84% sensitive and specificity, respectively.
Perfect. And I know actually in the presentation you had mentioned that it's the first ever urine malaria test or something to that,
Correct.
to that leading. So there's a lot of questions here about competitors or others in the market that are similar. So would it be fair to say that there aren't any true competitors for this product?
Correct. So this is the first urine test for malaria, and it may be interesting for the participants to learn that malaria testing has come a long way. In the early 1800s, microscopy was the first, or late 1800s, I'm sorry, not early, late 1800s, microscopy was the first mode of detecting malaria. In the 1900s, 1960, I believe, was when the first rapid test, the first blood rapid test. And about 100 years later, now we have the first urine test for malaria. I'm not saying it's going to take another 100 years for another non-invasive test to come on board, but it just shows you what the journey for malaria testing has been. Microscopy has been the longest, and the blood test, the rapid blood test, the second, and now we have the first urine malaria test.
Perfect. Hopefully it's not more than another 100 before the next innovation.
Well, we live in a very innovative society, but
Yes, definitely.
it's great to have a test that mimics what testing for pregnancy is like. You can imagine before you had to go to a health center or a doctor's office to test for pregnancy, or even blood sugar. Now you can do it at any point of care.
Perfect. So that's actually all the questions we have right now. But before we switch over to my side, is there anything else you wanted to share just before, maybe something that you expected to be in the questions that wasn't?
People sometimes ask if you have to use a specific urine. Does it have to be the first urine? And it does not. It could be any day or any time during the day that you collect the urine. We just ask that the patient have a fever.
Okay, that's perfect. Some of the references that Victoria had during the presentation about the details and specifications, even some of those studies and journals as well, and clinical results, all can be found here on the VIA Global Health site on the product page. So you can search for this in the search category, or again on the home page, you can find this product listed in our featured innovations, which are all just the most innovative products available in the market today. And there's quite a few people that had sent in questions about samples specifically, about having quotes provided. So if you want to reach out after the webinar, here's my contact information that's on the page now. There's also the link here for the Fyodor Urine Malaria test as well. So if you wanted to learn more about it there, you can find it. Or again, you could just go directly to the VIA homepage and always find this product listed in the featured innovations. So it looks like all of the questions have come in. So I want to just thank everyone that has attended from every country that we've seen on the panel here. But a special thank you to Victoria from Fyodor for taking the time and presenting and sharing thoughts and answering everyone's questions. So thank you very much, Victoria.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone else. Again, follow up directly with me if you have questions, but otherwise, we'll look forward to you on the next webinar. Thank you very much.